Good morning, folks. Good morning, party people. How's it going? Mike, good to see you. G Surgeon, shout out to the Netherlands there. And yeah, let's see what else we got going on. CGS party people. Oh, tea time. How civilized is that? I had never had tea, like real sit down tea times type stuff, until Erica and I went to London. Well, I think I went first. I can't remember who I originally went with, if it was a work thing or where I went. But wow, tea time is like so totally civilized. And as soon as I had that, I was like, I could do this all the time. I'm not really a tea person. It's okay. But just the whole cakes and finger foods and all that, that was kind of amazing. I was kind of like, that's just fantastic. David from Portugal. Santi, good to see you again from India there as well. All kinds of folks. Juanita Drobish out of Lafayette, Louisiana. Good to see you again. Although I think you said you moved. I can't remember if you said you moved out of Lafayette or what that was. I have a soft spot in my heart for Lafayette, Louisiana. It's just a beautiful place. They have Juanita gave me a king cake one, so it's just fantastic. The food in Louisiana is great. It's hard. Richard. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. Very cool. And so, too, for any of y'all who want to get notified whenever I do live streaming, I tend to not predict it in advance. I'm doing the Saturday and Sunday stuff, but the rest of the time I just kind of pop in whenever I have a free opening in my schedule. And right now, I have a free opening in my schedule because, no, I know, right? Oh, Marathon, welcome to the club, too. Thank you, thank you. Oh, and Surly Dev, that pop-up is featured chat. I should point over this way. That pop-up is featured chat, and I haven't, I don't think I've got anything fancy set up with it yet. I don't even know how to make it go away now. I'm not quite sure. You probably know. I'll leave that to you. I can make it go away via, I think I can make it go away via, I have an overlay for it. I'll just make it go away. Oh, no, good. It went away by itself. Okay, all kinds of Surly Dev. What is featured chat? See, Surly, that's a thing that you wanted me to set up, the moderated chat piece for our questions and answers. Welcome to the club, G Surgeon. I should actually put on my, because sometimes it'll say new sub and it's not actually a new sub. Y'all are resubscribing. Oh my gosh, Marathon gifted a whole bunch of subs. Wow, dang. All right. Oh, y'all are just, it's a party inside here. I'm totally going to minimize featured chat now if it's going to keep doing that thing. Holy smokes. Surly Dev says, I know I'm showing off. Oh, okay. Well, if you do know, I'm going to put it back in then. So good morning, party people. Santi says, will Clippy be here today? No Clippy today. Today was kind of a surprise. I had my regular client deals are 2-day long things. They're 2 days. Hi, Malik. Oh, Malik, good to see you again, too. 2-day things where we get together on the first day and we do a lot of not the DBA you're looking for. I shouldn't even try to talk now. Y'all are just being wonderful. Oh, thank you and welcome to the club. Woohoo! Damn, Marathon gifted 25 subs. Holy smokes. Wow. Jeez, oh Pete's. Damn, Marathon, you're just like making it rain up in here. That's incredible. Gringo Malbec. Oh, wow. All right, I'm going to turn off featured chat. I have no idea what's going on there with that. Let me mute that little thing as well. Featured chat was something that Surly Dev and I are working on to do like moderator type chats for when I ask questions. Sometimes I'll do open Q&A like we used to do with open hours and let anybody ask. And somebody won the lotto, exactly. Like open question answers like we used to do for office hours. And we would let people... nice. The emotes work on stream. Yes. Yeah, it's kind of cool. And so Surly Dev and I will be able to like pick out questions as they go past and like build them up into a queue and things like that. You feel special? You are special, Marathon. Damn, you with the rain and all in the subscriptions all in. That's just bananas. And it's neat to see how all that stuff works over on my side of the like control panel type thing as well. Office hours. Don't worry, Richie. You're going to be safe. Yes, all kinds of fuss. Oh, Surly, I'm on a really bad internet connection. Where are you at, Surly? You out doing something fun today, I would hope and assume? I am going to be doing something fun today. I know, Richie, I told you it was going to be a constant care, funny, constant care day, but the more I think about it, I'm like, oh, I should just totally take today off and not do anything. Woo, hey! because I had normally my client engagements are 2 days long. I did the first day yesterday, and we agreed, we're like, oh, we're actually done here. We've got everything that we need from the first day. So on the second day, I just gave them training classes instead so that they could go. So, iRock Driver, Camaro, did you change your name? Camaro, did you change your name to iRock Driver? Because that sounds a lot like the kind of thing that you would do. Wow, I'm staying in Germany for a few weeks. Oh, very nice. Very cool. Sherman says, nice shirt. Thank you. Porsche 914 from Luftgekult. Luftgekult is a air-cooled Porsche show where they get together and do a bunch of air-cooled Porsches curated by a couple of really cool people. And it's usually held in really beautiful locations. So like I went to one that was on the Universal Studios lot. So the Universal Studio, we got to walk through movie stages and just beautiful session for a beautiful place to display Porsches. Oh, you know it too. Oh, very nice. Yeah. So today, I don't know what today I'm going to probably, Richie is safe. So today I'm just going to sit out on the balcony and do dang near nothing. I mean, not now. Obviously, that would make for a hell of a boring stream, although it would be kind of, I should actually sit out there on the porch one day, out on the balcony. So what I tend to do when the weather's nice out here in San Diego is I'll just sit out on our balcony and, yeah, exactly, right. And just sit and surf the web and listen to Jimmy Buffett or whatever I've been thinking about these days. But we're trying to go, Erica and I are trying to go, Erica is successfully going, a month without alcohol, which for those of you who know me is a really big deal. Like that's fairly unusual. We usually drink every weekend just to, goof off. No, we never get drunk or anything like that. But we came back from our 2 weeks on vacation. And Erica was like, we were really bad over those 2 weeks. We should probably try to not drink for a month and see what happens. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. I'll do it to support you. She wanted to do it to lose weight. And I'm like, okay, sure. She's like super picky. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll support you. And I made it 2 weeks before we were at a place that has unbelievable Mai Tais. And I'm like, I never go out, and this is a safe, kind of healthy place. Not healthy as in the food. The food's not healthy, but, right now I don't like going out to restaurants because it's just kind of dangerous. I'm not one of those germaphobes. Like I'll eat raw meat and things like that. But there was that one time in Seattle. Yeah. So CGS said, how did that work out in Mexico? It was a result of us coming back from Mexico. So we spent a week in Malibu and a week in Mexico. And then coming back, we're like, we ate a lot of really made bad lifestyle decisions while we were out there. Not in terms, we didn't get like sick from the virus or anything, but just ate a lot and drank a lot. Certainly, someone asked a cool question on Twitch, unfortunately. Oh, that's true. It is only on Twitch. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, what we're doing is we're doing like the office hours chats. We could even try it out. So if y'all want to ask any SQL Server question, if you're on Twitch, if you want to ask any SQL Server question, you can, whether or not it's related to what I'm streaming or just something else. Now, Surly Dev, I'm going to unhide. CGS says, does your mom tell you that you're too skinny? So I used to be in high school, true story. I used to be so skinny that I would take supplements like Ensure, I think it's called, the milky like protein type stuff. I was so skinny that I wanted to gain weight. I was 6'2" and 145 pounds, which I think in the metric system is like 3 kilograms. I'm not very good with how that stuff works. And Peter's in here too as well. Good to see you again, Peter. So I was so skinny that I would take supplements trying to gain weight. I do not have that problem now. I do not have that problem now. I just have the belly. My arms are okay. My legs are okay, but just the belly. CGS says, are you still 6'2"? I'm 6'3" now. And then when I put my fancy slippers on, I'm like 6'4". But yeah. So I always get that thing. People see me in person and they're like, "Oh my God, you're so much taller in person than you seem on the webcam." So that featured chat, I imagine that Surly Dev did that. If not, featured chat is kind of messed up. Hi, Dimitri. Good to see you. All right. Oh, Marathon had asked, and it didn't pop up on the featured chat. I'm not sure. Surly Dev and I are still going to try to figure out how featured chat works. But when will we have RAM level persistent memory, and how will that impact SQL Server? I think we had. Oh, he did. Oh, I don't know if Surly Dev did that. Look at that. Oh, it even shows your face. Oh, that's so good that it shows the avatar type thing. That's phenomenal. Okay, so now I got to move up then the alert box for Twitch. Let me move that up higher so that as people subscribe, it doesn't move around there. That's kind of cool. CGS says you're getting a ton of new subs. That's because Marathon just like rained money down inside here and gifted subs to all kinds of people because Marathon was feeling welcome today or won the lotto or something. We supposedly we have persistent level or persistent memory, and I don't know if it's the Optane stuff or what it is, but there's it's not real RAM, but SQL Server uses it as a buffer for the transaction log. So if you need to insert, update, and delete a whole lot of really tiny stuff quickly, over time, our bottleneck has been writing to the transaction log can be like a millisecond of latency. So if a millisecond is even too high, then you can get this memory stuff, and I don't even remember what it's called. You can get this memory stuff that acts as if it's memory. It's used as a persistent buffer for the log file. Your log file writes go there first, and then SQL Server cleans them out to the official log file later. I'm like giving hand-wavy kind of answers because I don't use it, because here's the deal. Most of my clients who have write log waits, we just go in and tune up whatever query workloads they're doing. They're not really loading 100,000 rows per second continuously for extended periods of time. I know people are doing it. Like I know people out there, gaming companies are a great example when you have to track the pull of every time someone pulls a lever. And track the status of the game. I totally get it that that's where you need that kind of thing. But for most of us, write log just isn't that big of a weight. And plus, with a lot of us, we're not doing dedicated hardware anymore. A lot of us are going to the cloud, for example, where your latency to hardware is just much worse. You're going through so many layers of abstraction. So it's weird because there's never been a better time for hardware. Hardware's amazing today. CPUs kind of tailed off there for a while, but memory got cheap. You can throw 1, 2, 3 terabytes of RAM in a box relatively affordably. There's a creepy dude in the back mimicking your movements. Yeah, with the whole floor to ceiling Windows thing. And one of the things I love is that y'all get to see the sunrise here in California. Let's see. SP Help DBA. Nice name. Not bad. Good to see you again. We should not. The DBA says we're guessing Marathon is Jeff Bezos. I like that. No, NVMe is different. So NVMe is just a faster way to access SSD. So NVMe, it will let you put solid state in servers, laptops, whatever, and it's faster, but it's not as fast as RAM. It's cheap too. Like you can have NVMe drives inside laptops these days. Like Mac laptops have been NVMe for years. I want to say like 2, 3, 4 years. All right. We'll see if there's anything else that pops up in terms of the questions, and then I'll go start live coding over in the first responder kit. We have a release coming up. Oh, G Surgeon says, what is a practical use for file groups for developers? So let's say that you were going to load a bunch of data and you knew you were going to throw it all away. I'm going to give the example of, let's say that you run a data warehouse. Oh, it is working. Oh, Surly Dev. Oh, thank you. Oh, you got it working. Oh, that's sweet. Oh, that's fantastic. So Surly Dev, after I ask this one, I'll be like, okay, Surly Dev, what question should I answer next? And then that way you can tag a bunch of stuff and we'll go from there. Just realized these are my wrong glasses. These aren't my computer glasses. So let's say that you were going to load a data warehouse and you know you were going to keep only the last 3 years of history, and you always wanted to be able to delete the oldest year really, really quickly. So what you would do is you would have a file group per year, and then that way, whenever you wanted to get rid of the oldest year, you don't have to worry about things like database shrinks or a bunch of unused space lying around. So that way, whenever you're done with that, you can delete the tables out of there and then just drop that old file group and it's gone. The other thing that it's good for is truly different tiers of storage. let's say just for some reason that you had some NVMe storage like PCI solid state storage, and you had some archive level storage like spinning rotational magnetic rusty frisbees, and you wanted to put the valuable stuff on SSD and the crappy stuff like logs. Client the other day was storing all their XML logs. You wanted to put the XML logs on crap slow storage because you didn't really care about performance. You could have one file group for the good stuff and one file group for the crappy slow stuff. Just keep in mind that whenever you do this kind of design, like your enemy, your absolute arch enemy is moving things between file groups. If you have to move things between file groups, it's going to suck really bad because it's a transactional thing and there are going to be locks involved moving from one file group to another. You can get creative, but it's all up to you to code that kind of thing. So those are the two that I see a lot. Somebody will inevitably answer partitioning, but that's really the combination of both. That's when you want to delete the oldest partitions really quickly, and also when you want to have different tiers of storage. All right, so there's that question. Very nice. Now let's see if anyone else asked one. I'll let Surly Dev pick another one. Oh, it's so sweet how this works. Surly Dev, you are amazing. That is so fantastic. So Surly Dev's the moderator, so a round of applause here for Surly Dev doing the moderation thing. Karsten says, I kind of understand indexes, but let's say you have a web app with multiple filters, like say customer, employee, web, date start, end date, 8 different filters. What would you recommend? Separate indexes or indexes with, oh, this is so good. So let me do a demo and I'll show you. So let's switch over to SQL Server 2019. So what we'll do is we'll switch over to SQL Server 2019 and I'll show you. We'll work with the Stack Overflow database and we'll work with the users table, which is exactly the same table that I use for my demos and things like how to think like the engine. Marathon, right? See, it's been a while since you stopped in here and saw that. I have been doing all kinds of sweet stuff with the stinger transitions and all kinds of stuff. So let's say that sometimes you want to search on display name, sometimes you want to look, oh, it's your first time. Oh, okay, welcome to the club. I got all kinds of tricks up my sleeves. Woo! So let's say you want to sometimes search by name, sometimes you want to search by location, sometimes you want to search by reputation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and drop my indexes so that I don't have any whatsoever. I got that stored procedure drop indexes that will go through and drop all my non-clustered. Then I'm going to say, here's what my query looks like. Creator alter proc dbo usp search users. Let's say display name and varchar 40. Location and varchar 100 and reputation int as begin and go select star from DBO users where display name, hi Leah, equals display name. And well, to do this, let's say you said that there's going to be several different search conditions. So we'll do this. We'll say where display name equals coalesce display name, and location equals coalesce, location, and reputation equals coalesce, reputation. Getting all teary-eyed. Yeah, oh, that's not what I wanted to say. Option recompile. Now, I'm not going to explain why I'm doing the option recompile in here. That's kind of the case for a different session. But what I'm doing here is I'm building one stored procedure that takes a few different stored parameters, and people will query by it different things. So let's say that we're going to do, Joris says, yeah, that's true. USP search users, display name equals, I think Joris is in there. So sometimes we're going to search by Joris. Sometimes we're going to go USP search users, location equals San Diego, California, US. And then sometimes we're going to search by both. Search users, display name equals Brent Ozar, location equals San Diego, CA, US. So let's go see. So we've got this stored procedure put up into place. Now let's go through and run it with the actual execution plan. Oh, you know what I should really, hold on a second here. Let me say equals null, and equals null. All right, so let's throw that in, and then let's go through and run it. So we'll start by running it looking for Richie. So what I've done is I've run it just for display name equals Joris. SQL Server is going to go through and scan the entire users table looking for Richie. It takes a heck of a long time because SQL Server has to scan that whole entire table. Plus, it's the first query I just ran, and the users table wasn't up in cache. So in here, Clippy's in here going, hey buddy, looks like you're querying by display name. Sure would help if you had an index on display name. And then if I run it for location, oh, actually too, you know what I can do? I can say, well, I can't really, kind of, sort of. I can do, hey buddy, I guess it's like this. Hey buddy, I see that you're querying by, all right, I won't do that again. So if I query by location, if I turn around and look by location, Richie's proud of his low number. Now Clippy's in here going, hey buddy, oh, you know what would help? If I had an index on location and then you included all of the columns. Yeah, I bet you would love that. Now if I query on both of those, like I say, go find me all of the display name equals Brent's. You're right, CGS, you're absolutely correct. If I go find all the Brent's, now Clippy's giving me yet another different index. Hey buddy, looks like you're querying on display name. So if you listen to Clippy, he'll recommend that you create all these different indexes. You don't have to if what you're searching for is extremely selective. So let's say, for example, create index display name on DBO users display name. Then let's create another one, location, on DBO users, location, and create index reputation on DBO users, reputation. I can create indexes on all three of these, and SQL Server will use them individually, and SQL Server will even combine them. SQL Server will use both of the indexes where it's appropriate. Now the key, no pun intended, but the key is to make sure that these things are actually selective. Because if you search for something that's not selective at all, where the indexes won't really help, where SQL Server would have to do a bunch of back and forth key lookups, then it's going to suck. So now if we try looking for Richie again, it's nearly instantaneous because SQL Server is able to use that index on display name. Okay, so far so good. Now, if we look for, say, all the people who live in San Diego and zoom in, SQL Server will look for all the people who live in San Diego inside of location. Yeah, Marathon, I'm still working my way up on the whole Twitch streamer thing. That's the next thing that I got to work inside there. So inside here, SQL Server is willing to use the index on location. Now what happens if I query for both of them at the same time? If I query for both display name and location, if I go in and look, data is my new drug. You need a better dealer. So if I go in and look inside here, let's get it up over there. So now here it didn't use both of the indexes. I was looking for all the Brents in San Diego. Why didn't SQL Server use both? Well, the reason why is that either of those would be enough. I could either search just for Brent or for San Diego's because both of them are extremely selective. If I do something that's less selective, like instead of looking for Brent, if I look for a more generic location or a more generic name and a more generic location, like say, show me all the Alexes who live in India, well, Alex is a fairly common display name, and India is a fairly common location. So check this out. SQL Server uses both of those individually. It says, let me go find all the Alexes, then let me go find all the people who live in India, let me find the place where they overlap, and then I only need to do key lookups for the Alexes who live in India. So you can start by just doing single column indexes, but then where they end up failing you is where they're not selective enough. So hopefully that answers the question. Get started with single column indexes, then over time you can gradually add more and more columns in. A quick shout out to this week's sponsor. So this week's sponsor is Quest. Quest put together, speaking of query tuning advice, a free ebook on query optimization. You can go get it over at brentozar.com/go/optimization, where you can learn how to tune queries. Oh, Fraud asks, how is that decided by SQL? To find out, you can watch my free class, How to Think Like the Engine. If you search for Brent Ozar, How to Think Like the Engine, there's a video version of it, a blog post version of it. It's all totally free. It starts to introduce you to that whole concept of statistics, sargeability, etc. CGS says Quest must be a 2-week sponsor. They were 2 weeks back-to-back in a row. Thank you very much, Quest. And they have more spots coming up over the next couple of weeks as well. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's go back over here and see what's next in terms of our question list and see what y'all chose to ask about. So many good questions. Yes, early. Yeah, let's hit another one. Let's see what happens in with the next one. Not the DBA you're looking for. You know what? I'm going to move this thing around. Let me move it around so it's more natural when I look at the thing. Oh, I guess I don't have a choice. Oh, I forgot about that. I got to go into, I'll set that in featured chat at some point. Not the DBA you're looking for says, what can we do in terms of performance when we don't have access to modify the incoming SQL? Is it just index tuning? Oh, this is such a great question. I have a blog post just about this, and I'm going to show it to you. So if I come over here, I'm going to search for Brent Ozar Manager's Guide. Jeff York, thank you. Welcome to the club. Manager's Guide to Tuning Code. And then come in here. So this URL right here, and let me figure out how I'm going to go put this into Twitch. Here we go. I have to go hop up another browser and go put that in here. Manager's Guide to Tuning Code, and then paste that in so that y'all can see it. So what this is it's a little grid that I use with my clients, and I say, okay, what would you like to, yeah, that's true. I can totally do that. Yeah. What are you giving me the ability to change? So these are all the things that I can change inside of SQL Server applications and all that kind of thing. If I scroll down further, there are examples of, say, if I'm tuning SharePoint or Dynamics, which ones I'm allowed to change and which ones I'm not allowed to change. And then further down, there's an example of a third-party app. I'm talentless. I'm talentless. I love it. That's fantastic. That's true as well, CGS. So this, when you say, is it all just index tuning? This is a fun way to think about all the different ways that you can tune. And plus, one of the things that I love about that for employers and for clients is that I can say, look, the more you strike out, the less that you allow me to do, the more expensive the remaining boxes are going to become. Like, let's say that you have a car and you want to get that car to 200 miles an hour. And they tell you, well, you can't change the body, you can't change the aerodynamics, you can't change the wheels, you can't change the steering. You're going to have to put like the world's largest jet engine in there in order to get a Honda Civic to 200 miles an hour. It's going to be really expensive. Whereas if you take a car that was designed for higher speeds, like say a Porsche 911, and you don't have to put that big of an engine in it because it's already so much closer and ready to go. So hopefully that answers that one. Now let's, so now we'll go back over and tackle the next question. Oh, it's early, Dev. I'll move it around. I'll move featured chat around so that I can move it around. I know there's a setting in featured chat that I can, let me move it around. I'm on just a little bit. For some reason, Streamlabs OBS is being all wonky this morning. All right. Marathon says, do you think Microsoft will make a stronger, I'm all washed out there, will make a stronger attempt to make SQL Server viable on Linux and change the processor core payment model to encourage that? No, and it's a great question. I'll tell you why. So the whole, as far as I don't have any inside information, this is just based on like me doing casual conversations with people, my friends at Microsoft. One of the big drivers for SQL Server on Linux is Oracle. Oracle costs $47,000 a core for Enterprise Edition, and their customers want to move away if there's a cheaper alternative that meets their needs. So for years, Microsoft has been furiously doing checkbox compatibility, going, what does Oracle have? Okay, we got to build that. Okay, Oracle has table variables? All right, we got to build that. Oracle can do Java stored procedures? Okay, we got to do that. So Oracle runs on Linux, and the people who have Oracle want to stick with the systems administration that they're used to. So they're doing SQL Server on Linux, not because they want to compete with MySQL or Postgres, but because they want to compete with Oracle. Oracle's super expensive. SQL Server, even at $7,000 a core US, is still a screaming deal. It's $7,000 a core US. So I don't think that they're going to do anything with the payment model for Linux. I do think they will for Kubernetes. No, y'all don't have to add more questions. It's okay, because I also have the first responder kit that I wanted to go through and code into as well. Marathon talking about Larry Ellison. I will give him credit. The guy, God bless him, he was very gutsy in order to pull that off. That was, I mean, the guy has a Hawaiian island. How can you not have respect for that? That's pretty baller. CGS says Kevin asked a question. Kevin. Oh, I'll show you. Kevin says, not a deep question. Why do you use comments in a certain style? I'll go show you. So Kevin noticed, and Kevin, you did a wonderful job noticing this. Kevin noticed that whenever I do a comment, I always do this, and I never do this. So I bet some of you know, because I bet some of you have run into this in the past. But if you capture queries with any kind of performance monitoring tool, profiler, extended events, whatever, I bet you've run into problems like this. Select star from DBO users, where display name equals Brent Ozar, and location equals San Diego, CA, US. And then some bozo did this. This is a one-line comment. And then what you don't know, whenever it gets captured from things like profiler traces, extended events, there's all kinds of things that will just throw the query down on one line. When all this stuff gets thrown out on one line, everything after the two minus signs is commented out. And you don't know where the comment ended. So that's why whenever I do coding, I'm like, I always want to make it clear where the comment starts and where it ends. So if the query ends up going on one line, people can still understand what I was trying to do. But great question. And I'm so glad that you caught it, because it's hardly anybody ever catches that one. That's pretty cool. Oh, Supleasy asked over on YouTube, how do you get management to buy into separations of environments? Everyone just wants to make exceptions for everything and do emergency fixes right in prod. So there was a good tweet about that the other day, where someone basically said, if you think about the circle of influence versus your circle of concern, if you have a huge number of things you're concerned about, but you really can't influence very much, you're going to be unhappy. You're going to have a crappy job. You're going to be disappointed. You're going to have a bad time. You're going to be happier if you can do one of two things. If you can either grow your circle of influence, like get people to do what you want, or shrink your circle of concern, stop giving a damn. So what I'll do in that exact situation, if I'm faced with only production, people are making changes in production, what I do is I'll put down in writing, email to my manager, dear manager, here are the things that I'm concerned about. I want to let you know why I can't sleep at night. I can't sleep at night because I'm concerned that Bobby Tables over in development has no idea what he's doing. We poached him from a consulting company. The guy was a moron. This guy has no idea what he's doing. I would never say that in a letter to a manager, because that's going to come back to haunt me. I would probably say something more like this, because I got to give you good examples while I'm talking. I'm really concerned about how everyone has sysadmin permissions, and we have a tendency to run queries in production. And I'm going to voice the concern from management for myself. I'm going to say, there are times when I've accidentally run a query without a where clause, and I'm concerned that I might do something like that in production. And if I might do something like that, other people might do something like that as well. I just want to let you know that I'm concerned about it. And if someone accidentally does an update without a where clause, a delete without a where clause, whatever, I may not be able to restore the SQL Server anytime soon because we also are only able to keep so much backups. We don't do backups very often. So the idea here is to lay out what your concerns are for management. Tell them why you, Dimitri, I'm with you. Lay this out for management and put it down in writing. And you want to write it in a way that your manager can forward it up to her manager. Then shrink your circle of concern. Stop giving a damn. Because as long as you've communicated it to the manager in a way that, oh, you haven't been hearing the cheers. So as long as you've been able to communicate it in a way that your manager is not concerned, then that's kind of the end of it. Because if your manager doesn't care, that needs to be the end of it for you. Let's see if that works now. Yep, there we go. That worked. So cool. So that for me it's a combination of both. How do I grow my circle of influence? How do I get people to do what I want, which is more of a political thing, like read the book, How to what's it called? Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And this is true. Richie says, I don't have permissions in prod. And then also just shrink your circle of concern. Stop giving a damn about things you can't change. Because after all, you're always through the rest of your life, you're going to have instances where you're going to work for companies and you're like, oh my God, they're doing something that's an incredibly bad idea. And it's just, that's terrible. CGS says, what color is your parachute? Chalk. Chalk is the color of my Porsche 911, and that's what I consider my parachute. Worst case scenario, I drive that down to Mexico and I sell it on the black market, and then I go sit and drink tequila and eat tacos until I pass out. All right, so Surly Deb, yes, you can fire away with another question now. Fire away. So Pleasy, glad you welcome. CGS says, how is Helmut doing? He's out in Portland, Oregon, getting that brand new stereo and radar and laser gear installed. So excited about that one. Woo! Oh, and now it worked in the. I'm going to move it up. See if I can move it up just a little bit more to the top. Oh shoot, that moved in the wrong place. Hold on, just a second here. Grab, can it? Well, let me just. Nope, it won't. Okay, that's cool. No, it won't. It is not doing OBS locked up tighter than the Pope's poop chute. Boy, it locked up big time there. Come back over here. Let's go into there and then move that just a little. So now I have no idea what it was. Oh, it was a Santi question. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can scroll up and see what Santi's question was in. If we create an index by having all of the columns in the index, will it help? Will it help select performance? Yes. Will it help insert update? I have a screw coming loose in my office AC vent. The FBI's been up there trying to install a bug. Will it help select queries? Yes. Will it slow down inserts, updates, and deletes? Yes. Because every time you do an insert, update, delete, SQL Server has to maintain copies of that index. So if any column changes and that column is included in the index, the more columns you include, the slower inserts, updates, and deletes go. I have clients, true story, I was working with a client last week, over 100 indexes on their table, their like main critical table, over 100 indexes on it, and all of them were covering. All of them had select star. I know, right? It's terrifying. And their table is 100 times bigger than what you might usually expect. But it was essentially read-only. They loaded it extremely carefully, and it was just totally optimized for search. People could search on any column that they wanted. They just had to make sure that those searches were fast. Malik, you can't. Sadly, you can't. Isn't that a shame? But no such luck. All right. Oh, Santi says meant DBO users. So you can, but only if you're querying by display name. Like the first column in the index has to be in there. Santi, watch my course, How to Think Like the Engine. And in my course, How to Think Like the Engine, I talk about that exact topic, and I explain how the first column is so incredibly important. Surly Dev says over on YouTube, or I mean, Daniel says over on YouTube, is coalesce somewhat faster than this is null piece? No, actually, all of those suck unless I put in option recompile. For details on that, go watch my presentation on dynamic SQL. I'll show you where it's at. If you go to brentozar.com/go/dynamic, so brentozar.com/go/dynamic. That's a set of, or it's a T-SQL script on dynamic SQL that shows you the problems with regular searches and why dynamic SQL performs so much better. So it shows you the problems with isNull, coalesce, the kitchen sink design pattern. It's not a video. You actually have to download one of the Stack Overflow databases and step all the way through it. But it's kind of a teach yourself kind of script. I also teach it live in my mastering query tuning classes. It's about an hour and a half long altogether, but it shows you why coalesce and isNull they're like both of them don't really work worth a damn. CGS, no, I do inside the database, but I don't publicly because some of them are like just for clients, some of them are one-off type things. It's really the whole use for it is just for me, the stuff that I have to refer people to commonly, like the things people ask all the time. So, yes, Sandy, I know it sucks, doesn't it? All right. So let's see what y'all asked next. Surly Dev, I should do like a drum roll thing whenever I'm like, oh, this could be terrifying. Oh, who knows? Or maybe not, too. SP Help DBA, you've asked that a couple of times. SP Help DBA, listen up, pay real close attention. Watch my course, How to Think Like the Engine. It is free. Free as in beer, except no one actually gives beer away for free. But go watch that course. CGS. Yes, and yeah, there's you'll at the very least you'll get 404s, right? I've been meaning to put in a better 404 plugin so that it'll redirect you to whatever page I think you're going for on the blog, which would be kind of interesting as well. Over on YouTube, Abhishek asked, which one is better, checksum or hash bytes in order to identify updates? Try tracking them yourself. Like try putting in a trigger to track whenever a row is changed. So do a trigger so that on an update, it flips a flag, like updates a timestamp, things like that. Moshiko says, what a scary night behind. It is 5:30 here in San Diego, and the sun is, I don't know what time sunrise is today. It hasn't even started to start coming up. My wife got me all excited about the Comet show, and I didn't get to see it last night. It was kind of a bummer. Big Mike says, since you're using your laptop for production, do you need to license enterprise on it? I actually don't use anything production. Like I don't host things for clients or anything like that. We don't even use SQL Server inside the company. We actually use AWS Aurora. So yeah, I don't have anything. I don't even do like data analysis inside SQL Server. I use it for R&D, like building training classes or whatever. I'll tell you what, though, the stickler comes in with training classes. It's a training class where it's tough. So you want to see my beautiful car. So my beautiful car is more visible over on my Instagram. If you go to Instagram.com/Brento, Instagram.com/Brento, and I've got, you're going to make me log in. There we go. There are a couple of pictures of a helmet in all his glory. Oh, just love it. Oh, Lopez, am I up yet or still? I was up about 1:45 this morning, so it's 5:30 now. This is kind of typical for my sleep schedule. I'm usually fully at work by like 3 or 4 in the morning. Big Mike says, aren't you using it for video and for pay? Don't you consider that as production? I don't. I mean, like, I wouldn't do that. I only use development for that kind of thing because it's not like customers are getting value out of that. It would be interesting. I would love to see Microsoft come after me for it. That would be pretty funny. All right, let's see. Coming back over here. Let's see. Do you prefer cost? Yeah, Santi says you prefer cost threshold of pairs of 50. Any calculations to determine what is ideal for the server we're using? Yeah. Oh, Andy, thank you, sir. Good to see you inside here. Is there a calculation to get it right? The thing there is not by what I've seen people do is I've seen them patrol their plan cache and then try to run calculations based on that. But what they often don't include is the number of times that queries are executed and what user requirements for those queries are. Like, are they better off going parallel or serial? I am not a fan of using calculation. If you're going to spend time trying to micromanage cost threshold, it's time to go tune your queries and indexes instead. Abused sysadmin says customers don't get value out of what you do. No, not out of the data in the database. So y'all may want to go read the licensing guide. Check out Microsoft's licensing guide for SQL Server. It's wonderful. It's super detailed. I know it sounds bad. You're like, oh my God, licensing for SQL Server. Read the documentation. Are you out of your mind? And I'm like, no, it's actually really good. It goes into great detail, gives you all kinds of examples. So they've done a really good job on that. What else? Let's see here. Matthew says, how do you handle pagination for search queries? If you watch my course, Mastering Query Tuning, I go into it in there. And Mastering Query Tuning, I spent about an hour on it, talking about how you build queries, being aware of the indexes on them, and you do a separate CTE or a temp table first, pulling the data into there with just the IDs, then you join back to it, getting the rest of the columns that you want. Now you give sample queries to the students. So, but great question, but a little tricky. All right, so we've been going for a little while, I think. We should probably take a bio break. So let's take a 5-minute bio break. I will go refuel my espresso. If you have any other questions, feel free to get them in on Twitch only. So folks on YouTube, you can ask, but they don't go into our queue. So those of you on Twitch can ask them over there. And then I'll be back here in 5 minutes. So see y'all back in 5. Maybe, or maybe not, because this damn thing is not working on... Come on in, big fella. Now, what is going on here? Streamlabs, scene, go. I swear I don't know what's up with these shorts. I need to get rid of these shorts because every time I wear them, it feels like my fly is open. It's like they're breezy in through the zipper. I don't know how this works, but like I'll be walking through the apartment and I'm like, yeah, no, it's still, is it? No, okay. Just got that weird, oh, CGS, thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, I mean, that's the wrong, oh, it should be more like this. That's better of what it should be there. Well, thank you. That's very sweet. Let's see here. Someone said humor. Mr. Garum, I'll go ahead and answer that one just because it's up there. How likely are businesses adopting? Oh, no, okay, all right. Going after Brent would be like chopping off the marketing department. So it's kind of hit or miss because I say a lot of negative things about Microsoft. One of them will go live this morning, actually. I have a post going live this morning about how Microsoft used to say, nothing stops a hackathon transaction. They were like bragging about how in-memory OLTP was so fast. And unfortunately, this past week, I actually had a client whose hackathon transactions were stopping, and the cause for it is kind of hilarious. It was their fault. I mean, clearly, and the client knew it was their fault once we broke the code open and saw it. But I just was reminded of how Microsoft was all, nothing stops a hackathon transaction. And I'm like, actually, I'll give you 2 commands right now that stop them pretty quickly. So, but it's okay. So, sort of just rant. The client's code was actually so bad when the thing that they're doing in it, which is really hilarious. I'll show y'all. Well, oh no, I'll go up. I'll answer this one, but at 8:15 a.m. Pacific, you'll be able to read it on the blog. So Tarek on Claudio on YouTube says, rebuilding versus reorging indexes. How often should you do it? I'm a fan of weekends. Just like assuming that you have a 9 to 5 kind of business where the workload is concentrated Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends you have more maintenance time. If you have more maintenance time on the weekend, I'm a fan of doing it just over the weekends. I do know shops that are very 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, that they're only busy Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And then after 5 p.m., they have all the maintenance time in the world. And I know people who do index rebuilds and reorgs then. And those same people often complain that when they come in the morning, they have a lot of parameter sniffing problems. Well, the reason why you have parameter sniffing problems is because you're rebuilding these indexes and updating the statistics, which effectively clears the plan cache. And when I get them to slow down, I go, hey, how about you just try for 1 week? Just try 1 week, not rebuilding indexes, reorging them, and updating your statistics. And instead just doing that on the weekend. Let's see how your week goes. Let's see if during the week your queries are more stable and you get better execution plans. And then they're like, wow, my help desk complaints really slowed down. And I'm like, well, exactly. It was your own fault. You were rebuilding and reorging too often. Not reorging doesn't affect it, but rebuilding and updating stats. So then we ease them off on that, and they're like, oh, okay, it's not so bad now. Garam Masala says, how, and I know it says Garam Masala, otherwise I'm not making that up, even though it would be funny. Says, how likely are businesses adopting SQL on Azure? What year do you think we'll all be working on Azure? Oh, I have a blog post about that. So quite a while back, Adam Mechanic, I believe it was, predictions. Adam Mechanic had us, where was it? I want to say it was 7 years. 7 years. There we go, 8 years. So there's this blog post, databases 8 years from today, where I think it was Adam Mechanic asked us to guess what life will be like 8 years from now. So that was 2018. So guessing what we would predict in 2026. And I believe that in 2026, everyone's default database would be in either Azure SQL DB or something like it. Whether Amazon or Google come out with something that's really competitive with Azure SQL DB, because I don't think if you're building a SQL Server app, thank you, Ernesto, thank you. If you're building a SQL Server app, I don't think that Amazon RDS or Google Cloud Spanner or SQL Server is really competitive with Azure SQL DB if you're building a new app from the ground up. But if you have an existing app In 2026, you'll still be using SQL Server. Unless Microsoft fixes cross-database transactions and linked servers. Cross-database transactions and linked servers are the two showstoppers that I see over and over and over again. It just never stops. So, and of course, too, I would be crappy if I didn't at least mention that you should be aware of other database platforms out there. Like when Richie and I built SQL Constant Care, and why I say we built it, I sketched some stuff out, and then he did a much better documentation, and I just paid him to keep building it. And I stood back and tried to stay out of the way. When we built SQL Constant Care, we didn't use SQL Server either. We used AWS Aurora, specifically the Postgres flavor. I am a huge fan of AWS Aurora. It has drawbacks, but it's pretty cool. SQL sucks. Will I do a training on session replication? Never. 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 You can write that down in stone. I would stab myself in the face before I would do training on replication. Oh, SQL sucks. Oh, okay. Yet no, absolutely no, hell no. And you know what's really funny? If you go and read books on SQL Server replication and then go try to email the authors, they don't want to work with it anymore either. It's really funny. The only people I know who like replication are the ones who don't have to take calls for it. Like, oh yeah, replication's fantastic. Will you take my support calls for it? No, I won't. I have a friend of mine who works for Microsoft, takes the same approach. Data is my drug says, any general tips on debugging dynamic SQL? Yes. If you go watch that class, well, not watch it, you'll have to step through the demo scripts. I have a bunch of stuff in there for debugging dynamic SQL. Now, it is about an hour and a half long script to go through and walk through and read all the parts of it and understand what I'm doing, and I talk you through it as if I'm standing on stage in front of you. If you want to see me actually do it in front of you, it's in the Mastering Query Tuning class. So if you have a live class season pass, go into the Mastering Query Tuning class, and there's a whole module, hour and a half long module just on dynamic SQL, where I show you all my debugging tips for it as well. It's really cool. I love it quite a bit. Santi says, in the stored procedure example, when you created 3 indexes and it did a merge, will that even be helpful with a high volume of data? So the users table in the one that I'm working with is 9 million rows. So 9 million rows. Now, there are cases, just to give you some perspective, so it's not tiny data, it's only 1 gig in size, but at least it's 9 million rows. You can go way higher. And Santi says, because it sounds better to have 3 different indexes than one combined. Yes, it's generally better to have 3 different indexes, because what happens if I'm not searching on the first column? Remember, we created it on display name, location, and reputation, 3 different indexes. And you said go create one that leads with display name, then location and reputation. Well, if I only know the location, that index is almost useless to me. Not completely useless, but almost useless to me. To tell you why, I'm going to give you an example. Santi, you're a young person. You're so young, fresh out of school. You may not be aware of this, but we used to have this thing called a phone book. What I'm about to describe is going to sound bananas. We used to have printed volumes of personally identifiable information delivered to our door for free by the phone company. I know. They would give out PII for free. This is before the GDPR, obviously, and it's going to drive me crazy even just thinking about this. So you wouldn't believe this. But the phone book was on last name, first name. So it was organized by last name and then first name. It had everybody in your whole entire town, all their last names and all their first names. Well, if you only knew someone's first name, like you only knew Brent, is the phone book really useful to you? No. You got to scan through the whole entire phone book looking at everyone because it's sorted by last name, then first name. If you don't know the first column of an index, that index is relatively useless to you. It's not the DBA you're looking for. It says phone books equals PII. I never looked at that before. Hey, you know what else? Go, for those of you who live in apartments, if you live in apartments, go to like the front of your apartment where all of the directories are at, where it has things like who lives in which apartment. If you live in an older apartment that still does that, that's technically a GDPR violation. If you go to your area of your apartment where people dump off their mail and the mail is out there with resident names and all that, that's PII. If you walk into a storage closet where your apartment keeps all of the deliveries and you can see people's names and addresses in there, that is a GDPR violation. It's once you technically get into the obscure parts of it, it's stunning how many how many technical GDPR violations are. That's why I still won't go anywhere near the whole selling stuff to EU, so it kind of blows. All right, so if there are any others, I don't know if Surly Dev, if there are any other ones out there, if anybody's got anything in the queue. Doesn't look like we're actually going to be doing any coding today at all. CGS says, if you ever get back in the office, we don't have an office. I've been working from home since 2004 or 5, somewhere in there. Can you and Richie do a live stream where you just BS for 2 hours about life, the universe, and everything? We totally could do that. And we used to do office hours. The thing we would have to do is we would have to not take any questions, and we would just have to like not even have any kind of feedback up, because he and I would immediately go off on all kinds of tangents just riffing off what you're talking about. But I think y'all would really love hearing me and Richie talk for just like 2 hours straight. I'm Talent says, what were the problems with linked servers and cross-database transactions you just referred to regarding moving to Azure? They're not supported. So if you want to do Azure SQL DB, you can't do linked servers from Azure SQL DB to something else. And you can't do cross-database queries without going through this ridiculous Rube Goldberg setup of defining all of the tables that you're going to query and which database they live in. BS, just someone just called my name. So it's not that Azure SQL DB isn't good. It's awesome. It's phenomenal. If you want all the power and features of SQL Server with the simplicity of having someone else manage it, and you're building a brand new database from the ground up, it's fantastic. But if you rely on cross-database queries or linked servers, that's just kind of like, whoop, not going to happen here. CGS says, you and Richie could invite us all to a Zoom call. I think Richie and I are less about meetings. I think if I never did another Zoom call for the rest of my life, I would kind of be okay with that. The downside of that, I have a Zoom call that starts in 23 hours. And Richie's seen my calendar. If you look at my calendar, it's all Zoom calls. Zoom call every day, 4 hours long. The Botsko says, good to see you again, Botsko. Botsko says, Dimitri, you're absolutely right. It's going to be waiting for the next stream. Botsko says, a question about maintainability. If in a stored proc I have date now equals get date and I use across procedures, what's the problem? What? Versus using get date. Okay. Let me rephrase it. Is there a performance overhead to calling get date? Not of any serious. If get date is your biggest performance bottleneck, you're mistaken about the rest of your code. Like the rest of your code is really the problem. Because if you think about it, after all, there's going to be an overhead to fetching the value of a date every time, right? Now, there are overheads to calling system stuff like getDate. And it's not getDate, but I want to say one of the UTC ones, there's overhead involved with calling one of the like UTC type things. But plain old, and I don't think it's get UTC date. There's something else that's an overhead, and I can't remember what it is. But like just get date, I wouldn't be concerned about it at all. You're totally okay, totally fine. The reason why I like doing it in a variable up at the top is so that I get exactly the same values throughout my code, because you probably need consistency in that date throughout the whole entire set of code, especially if you're inserting rows in multiple places or fetching results. I don't even know, data is my drug. I don't even know what that is. I don't even know what percent type is. And if that's your biggest headache and you're leaving from Oracle, you haven't seen your licensing bills. Because let me tell you what, that's like $47,000 a core. That's not a headache. That's like a heroin addiction. And it's not that I don't like Oracle. It's amazing. They have a really cool sailing team. Nice Hawaiian island. Nate says over on YouTube, any tips or gotchas on SQL Server performance on a vSAN and HCI, highly converged infrastructure, aside from vendor performance best practice white papers? Oh, you poor soul. Okay, so here's the deal. Everyone who I've ever had, now, there's some bias inside here, right? No one comes to me when they're having a good time. No one says, Brent, we'd like to pay you $7,000 to come hang out with us and we'll show you how cool our SQL Server. No, we're not having any problems. We just have a lot of money and we'd like to throw it at you. You know, that's not how I usually get customers, usually. So people come to me when they're on fire, when they're not having a good time. Every single time I've seen a customer with vSANs, highly converged infrastructure, Nutanix, stuff like that, the write performance has been so horrific that their write performance has been their bigger problem. And if you look outside in the rest of the world, you never see that. You don't see most SQL servers bottlenecked on writes, but the highly converged infrastructure is just, the vendors are like, well, we just have to coordinate writes across these 3 pizza boxes. Hold on. Give us a few milliseconds. And in theory, it seems really well, and it works really well across the rest of their servers. It just doesn't work worth a damn whenever you're dealing with something really transactionally intensive in SQL Server. Especially the worst case scenario is something that doesn't insert, waits for the commit, doesn't insert, waits for it to come back, doesn't insert, and so forth. So those single-threaded one-at-a-time writes are just terrible. So have I seen any tips for highly converged infrastructure? Yes, move off of it. Local solid state is just like $1,000 a terabyte these days, just at the very top end. It's usually cheaper than that. SQL sucks. Glad you liked it. I used to do always on training. So true story. I used to do always on training. And because when it came out in SQL Server 2012, I adored it. It was fantastic. Always on availability groups. Best thing since sliced bread. And it has a curse and a blessing. Microsoft keeps investing in it. They keep adding more and more stuff. They don't make it any easier to troubleshoot. Like every single version, they're like, okay, now we've got distributed availability groups. Okay, now we've got load balancing across readable replicas. Okay, now we've got Linux. Okay, now we've got Kubernetes. And I'm like, okay, great. So how do I troubleshoot any of that stuff? Now we've got, and I'm like, no, stop with that. Easy. Hey, whoa, time out. How about some troubleshooting? Because if you read through the KB articles for every cumulative update that comes out, there are always fixes for availability groups. They're always crazy esoteric. There are so many edge case problems and all that. So when Microsoft came out with, when they first started talking about availability groups on Linux, I'm like, I'm just going to kind of step away from that, and I'm not going to kind of go anywhere near it. So that was where I drew a kind of line in the sand in my career, and I said, it's nothing against Linux. I love Linux. I run a Mac. I'm like, the whole reason I bought Macs like 15 years ago was to start learning Linux better than I knew it at the time. I'm a huge fan of Linux. I don't administer it or anything like that, but I just don't have the lust in my career to go troubleshoot Linux high availability pacemaker, things like that. I'm not there. It's not going to happen. SQL Dev DBA says, data is my drug. I'm an Oracle DB, unfortunately. It's okay. You can wipe your tears with $100 bills. Dynamic data type also creates dependencies. Anytime a table DDL runs, all dependent. Ugh. No, I shouldn't make a face because we have our own problems inside a SQL Server, but yet that doesn't sound like a good time. That might be my mom. I'm not sure. My mom's name is Cindy. Whether you're my mom or not, thank you. I appreciate it. Surly Dev says that on. Thank you again, Surly Dev, for the moderation help. You are awesome. John Eden over on YouTube asks, can you do a session on performance tuning a single stored procedure with temp tables, table variables, CTEs, nested views, functions, 4XML cursors? That would help me out greatly. Oh, I do that all the time. I do sessions like that all the time. It's called consulting. You think I'm going to get involved in that hot mess for free? What are you out of your mind? Would you do that? Look, I have a lot of fetishes. You don't want to look at my browser history, but I draw the line there. Like, I don't want that much pain and that much ugliness unless I'm getting paid for it. You can kind of think of consultants as prostitutes. And I was going to say highly paid prostitutes, but prostitutes are probably also highly paid. So I don't know that I would go running into doing a webcast on that, but I do that all the time in consulting. There's sometimes in my consulting engagements where I look at the code and I'm like, oh, this is going to be easy. There are some cases where, like the code you just described, I look at the code and I go, well, I'm going to be drinking tequila tonight, but let's do this. So it's doable, but it's just a lot of work, and that's why I drive a Porsche. All right, so there's that one. Oh, Dave over on Facebook asks, you bought that suit for the stream. Rahul, thanks. Welcome to the club. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Rahul. Dave says over on Facebook, Dave Gervais says, would you replace a 2017 cluster with a bunch of stuff to a 2019 big data cluster? No. 2019 big data clusters are not about the transactional and OLAP stuff that you're talking about there. Big data clusters are really all about querying data from lots of sources. So it's like having a data warehouse without having to do the ETL. I am grossly oversimplifying, just keeping it really simple, but it's not designed for transactional insert updates and deletes like what you mentioned. You have a transactional system. So great question, but no, it's not a good fit for that at all. Where it's a better fit for is, imagine you're an enterprise with a data warehouse and you got a lot of different systems and you want to start getting faster time to value for your reporting. Like, you want to be able to pull stuff in from your sales system, accounting system, web metrics system, and all that without having to define a bunch of stuff and drag it across the wire. And you want real-time data. You don't want to have to wait around for an overnight ETL process to run. That's where big data clusters make a lot of sense. And when I'm one of those people who's like, version 1 features from Microsoft, I tend to stay away from. I'm like, version 1, who knows whether they're going to invest in it or not. And when I first saw big data clusters, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is linked servers. All it really is linked servers on steroids. It just has way better performance than linked servers do. But then when they came out with the licensing price, it's $2,000 per server, $2,000 per Kubernetes host or something like that. But the pricing, I was like, hot damn, this actually works out pretty well. So I can see why people would use it. And of all the version 1 features I've ever seen, I'm like, big data clusters might be one if you're going to bet your future on training and consulting, that kind of thing. Wow, that's kind of awesome. That's kind of slick. CGS. All right, so let's see what comes in next. It's Ernesto. Ernesto over on YouTube says, does the first responder kit run under Azure SQL Serverless SQL? It's not supported because the problem is Microsoft keeps changing DMV columns without warning, and there's no change log, and there's no, like, here's what we're changing on which dates. So there was a time in my dark past when I was young and I needed the money, and I tried to keep the first responder kit up with Azure SQL DB. I gave up on that because I just had too many instances where they would break something and then people would blame me. You said the first responder kit was compatible with Azure SQL DB. Why doesn't it work today? And I'm like, I'm a volunteer. I'm doing this for free. I really hope you enjoy it. But those buttholes over at Microsoft keep changing the product without warning and without leaving any kind of breadcrumb trail behind. So I just gave up and I said, Jedi Mind Gorilla says that this voice is annoying. So I just gave up on trying to support that. I'm like, good luck and Godspeed. And it says that in the README too. We don't support Azure SQL DB in any way, shape, or form. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't work, you're expected to file a pull request along with your issue, but don't submit issues without a pull request. Over on YouTube, Fiker says, do you think never maintaining my indexes is okay if I do regular stats updates? So it's kind of tricky. Every now and then, when I want to get people to think, when I want to get people to think about what they're doing, I will say something very controversial on the blog or in a presentation. Like, you should never eat Cheetos. You know, that isn't something that I would ever say because I love Flamin' Hot Cheetos. But I'll say something like that just to grab people. Wait, what's wrong with Cheetos? So I have said in the past, stop rebuilding your indexes, you know, just to get people to stop and think, well, wait, what's wrong with rebuilding your indexes? So that they start and think about what the drawbacks are, like the parameter sniffing issue that we talked about earlier. Never, though, that's a pretty strong word. The thing that I would worry about is that you're facing either forwarded fetches problems in your heaps, or you have tables where a lot of data has been deleted or updated, and now your pages look like Swiss cheese. You have a lot of empty space in your pages. So never, I think, is kind of a strong word. I would try monthly. You know, like try doing your index work monthly and then go from there. I have a friend, Jeff Moden, who heard my grab you by the shoulders thing about never rebuild indexes, and he ran through experiments, and it actually did really well for him in most of his tables. So if someone wanted to do that, I'm okay with it. Just make sure that you're as aware as Jeff Moden is about his levels of internal and external fragmentation. Data is my drug says, have you ever been asked to make code go slower? I actually have. So in a case where the application couldn't keep up with the volume of data that was coming out of SQL Server, and we had to deal with concurrency issues where multiple app servers were trying to run queries at the same time. So a whole bunch of app servers were getting the next job that they had to do, and then they were overwhelming a file server with requests for files. So we had to inject a wait for into the code. I know, yes, it's absolutely true. Rather disappointing, but if you want to slow down your SQL Server, wait for is a pretty quick and easy way to do it. So then that way they just bought them enough time until they could speed up the file server. Thanks again, Early Dev. So John, AJ says, do you see BI or DBA being the future, or do you only see data science being the future? There are a lot of moron talking heads, he said, being the guy on camera, being a talking head. There are a lot of moron talking heads out there who seem to think that data is going to manage itself. Those people have never paid a bill in the cloud. Richie and I are great examples. So we have all our data in AWS Aurora. Aurora kind of sort of manages itself, but not really. But you pay a monthly bill. And so from time to time, our monthly bills go up and we have to deal with the aftermath. We have to figure out what queries are causing all the problems. You don't have to do that. The talking heads who are like, manages itself. The cloud totally manages itself. Well, yeah, for an unlimited budget, it does. But if you don't have an unlimited budget, then all of a sudden you have to start finding out what queries are making things slower and then go fix those. Now, the cloud is taking care of the parts of the job I never like to do anyway. I don't want to come in Saturday night and do patching. I don't want to restore a database because some yo-yo dropped a table. So the cloud is nice for that because they take care of some of that, makes it point and click easy. You don't have to learn the arcane gotchas involved with a command line restore. But they're still not fixing the queries for you. And Azure's all up there. We're doing self-tuning, but all they're doing is really a herpa-jerp job on the index. See, you have a point. I was always okay with the Saturday nights involved with the patching. You have a point there, so that I will give you bonus points for that. So let's see here. Anything else we've got over in the queue? John says, I've had this question for a while now. What should I specialize in? Do you only see BI or DBA being the future, or do you see what should you specialize in? So if for me, it's two things. What do you feel a passionate calling towards? And what makes money? So for me in my career, it was always like, if I could find one of those, I was excited. If I found something where both of those Venn diagrams overlapped, it was ding, 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 ding at the jackpot. So I just kept looking for things that were highly paid that I enjoyed. And as I got older through my career, I was like, okay, I think I figured out what it is. It's database administration. Getting more narrow than that, it's specifically performance tuning database administration. Are there going to be jobs in BI, database administration, data science? Yes, absolutely. Find the one that calls to you personally, because all three of those are well paying. I mean, you're not going to starve with any of those three jobs. You're pretty good. Every now and then you'll hear some moron go, database administrators are dead. And I'm always like, oh, go on, keep talking. Because the less of you there are, the more money I make. Santi said, in one of the streams, you said you like the fact that fact tables can be a heap with a high volume of data. Is there any blog post for that? Yes. If you search for Microsoft Fast Track Data Warehouse Reference Architecture, so if you search for Microsoft Fast Track Data Warehouse Reference Architecture, Microsoft has a whole guide on how you do this, how the design patterns work, all kinds of that. Oh, Surly Dev, 0. Absolutely 0 at this point. At this point, that is probably not going to happen. I had no idea that we were going to end up with, first off, I didn't know you were going to be here, which is kind of awesome, and yay for you. But then also, I didn't know that we would get so many good questions, and so I was like, that's kind of good. Oh, Botsko, that's a great question. Do you need data science? If you're going to do data science, do you need math? I think really to get a credible job in data science, you might stumble your way into your first job, but to get your second job, to like prove yourself, you're going to be in competition with people who have doctorate degrees. So I'm always kind of like, when I see people self-training as data scientists, I'm like, it's early, then I'll let you do the rest. When I see people like, oh, I'm a self-taught data science, I'm like, okay, you're gonna get your first job. Let's see you get the second one. Because the competition is pretty hot and heavy. It's kind of like being a doctor, right? Like if you're going to be a doctor, could you maybe get a fly-by-night job in a strip mall somewhere that isn't really asking for qualifications? Maybe, but after you get fired because you killed your first couple of patients, how are you going to get your second job? There are only going to be so many people who are going to hire you after they call the strip mall and check and see how many people you killed in your last doctor job. So it's kind of the same thing with data scientists. You need to know a whole lot about things like algorithms. You'll see people going, oh, I got a job in data science. I don't even know how to spell algorithm. Well, yeah, okay, let's see you get the second one. All right, so see, I was going to go jump in, Surly Deb, but I'll let you go and drill another one. Drill another one? What kind of weirdo language was that? Choose another one is what I really probably should have said. Any suggestions between tracking down performance degradations between 2014 and 2016 compat mode? Great question. Pick one query. Pick one query that has a different execution plan between the two. So what I would normally do is start with SP Blitz Cache and look at your top most resource-intensive queries. Look at your top most resource-intensive queries. And when you flip compat mode, look at that list again and look at differences between their durations, their logical reads, CPU, and so forth. Just pick one query. Out of that list of the performances that are different, pick one query and then flip the compat modes back and forth in a development or testing environment and look at the differences in execution plans. Then start to get to the root cause of why those execution plans are different. Is it something about statistics, something about a 2016 behavior change? Was it parameter sniffing that caused it? Most of the time, when I see people run into this between 2014 and 2016, it's actually just parameter sniffing. I can imagine edge cases where it has to do with, for example, batch mode execution on Columnstore indexes. I'm sure in 2014 and 2016 there are other rare differences, but the one that hits me 9 times out of 10 is just plain old parameter sniffing, which is why now I have classes just for parameter sniffing, because there's so much involved with it, so many gotchas that you have to know. Y2, or Mahesh, how SQL handles negative dollar amounts. If you're worried about your banking account, Mahesh, don't worry. The bank totally takes care of that. You just got to stop bouncing checks, though, man. You just only spend money that you have. You go easy on it there. I know that you want that gold-plated tooth that you've had your eye on for a while, but just go easy. You can start with an aluminum foil. Just take aluminum foil, put it over your tooth, and no, the people aren't really going to be impressed by it, but it'll give you that same feeling where you can kind of lick your teeth and it feels like there's gold on it. And then over time, later, you can save up and invest towards the gold tooth. But that also, that person that you're going to that sells the gold tooth out of a strip mall, it's not really real gold. So Data's My Drug says, I've got an Azure SQL DB having connectivity issues that was ultimately a problem with, you also have diarrhea of the word processor. Okay, you're just going on and on. All right, cool. One of the Microsoft techs asked me, got on the phone if I could ask me if I could slow down a proc that I had written because he thought that was what the problem was. Oh, Microsoft support level 1. So just as a side note, whenever you run into Microsoft support issues, if you're on the call or emailing back and forth with Microsoft support, never be afraid to use the words, I need to escalate this. When you say, I need to escalate this and here's why, that helps to get you a little bit of leverage to go, I need to talk to someone who's a little bit more senior. Don't abuse that, because often the level 1 people actually are onto something where you do have a problem and they know about it, and even though it sounds amazing to you that you actually have a problem, a lot of times they're onto something. But if you hit someone who's just a bump on a log, don't be afraid to ask to escalate. Solid State Wasp says, some years ago, I saw you link to a blog post that was scaling all these different times into human understandable terms. Yes, that is the coding horror infinite space between words. So that's this blog post from Jeff Atwood, The Infinite Space Between Words, and it is a great analogy of what performance is between CPU time, RAM, and all that. If you scroll down a little, this is probably the chart that you're looking for here that puts CPU speeds relative to internet access and all that other kind of thing. So that, if you go search for The Infinite Space Between Words by Coding Horror, excellent post, really like that a lot. All right, quick shout out to this week's sponsor. So Quest sponsored this week's webcast. You can get a free ebook on query tuning from them over at brentozar.com/go/optimization. So that is brentozar.com/go/optimization to learn how to tune queries good. All right, coming back over to, we'll do one more question before we do a bio break. Surly Dev, what one question do you think we should answer? And it's amazing how many questions y'all had today. It's absolutely insane. Damien says, I love free books. I'm with you. I have a disturbing habit of buying a lot of books on Amazon Kindle, and then I never actually read them. I have a pretty bad backlog. There's a point in time, like 5-10 years ago, when I sat down in Paul and Kim's house and we were going through our ebooks, and they gave me like 50 ebooks that I went and bought, and I'm still like working my way through reading those. I feel terrible about that. Paul Randall's such a wonderful, voracious reader. I would totally listen to a webcast or a podcast from him. CGS says you can read them when you're relaxing in Iceland next year. It's true. I tend to, when I go away for a length of time, I tend to read business books, as terrible as that is. Oh, Surly Dev says, can we go to bio break now? Hell yeah, we can. Anything Surly Dev wants, he absolutely gets. So we'll take a 5-minute bio break now, and I'll see y'all back in here in 5 minutes. welcome back. So let's see here. Things that, oh yeah, my blog and my cameras and all that. Folks were talking over the break. Brian says, love the view. Yeah, or downtown downtown San Diego. Freak Chemist says, how do you have such an amazing camera quality? So the cameras are Sony A6000s or A6100s. So it's like a $600 mirrorless camera. So $600 for the camera. The lens you're looking at here is $1,000. So the lens is a huge driver of the quality. So that's what helps blur out the background really well. The lens is like a Sigma 14 millimeter or 18 millimeter. And then the one from my front camera, the one sitting over my monitor, that is another Sony A6100 and the kit lens. So that one's not as nice, but it doesn't need to be as nice because it's just shooting me against this, and the green screen takes care of fuzzing out the background. So that helps a lot. CGS says Canon lenses. No, Sigma. So Sigma makes really good prime lenses for the Sony lineup of cameras. And because I've just always loved Sony cameras, they're so creative and innovative compared to a lot of ahead of the timeline for Canon. Canon started catching back up, but just like you can get such a good camera from Sony for $500-600, it's amazing. And especially in terms of like webcam quality, it's stunning compared to what usual webcams are. The camera during the break that looks out at my view, that's mounted under my desk. It's a Logitech Brio. Logitech Brios are relatively inexpensive, like $100 webcams. I used to use that as my main camera, but of course, you know, when you want to up the grade on quality, makes a really big difference. All right, Mr. Wormhole, no, it's the Microsoft SQL Server flavor of querying. So T-SQL is Transact SQL is what you use for Microsoft SQL Server. It's like the equivalent of PL SQL, I think Oracle calls it, and so forth. Wet Forest Farts is great views. Downtown San Diego, and the sun is starting to come up. Now, normally when I'm doing my streams, I'll tell y'all that I stop around 8 o'clock in order to go get coffee and a bagel. I don't know that I'm going to make it that long this morning because I started like really early. I started the stream kind of early. So I may do one more round before, you know, and then break at our next bio break and then go from there. We'll do one more round of questions just to see what y'all come up with and then go from there. So let's see if there's any other questions that came up through the list. Let's see here. We'll see if Surly Dev has one. Oh, Damon on YouTube says, "What are your thoughts on the Power Platform as a whole?" I think it's cool, but it's a development thing. It's also a reports development thing and like an executive development thing. I could go the rest of my life. I go the rest of my life and never hear an executive say, "Can you change this yellow to something a little brighter? Can you move the totals? Can you move them over 3 pixels to the left? No, 2 pixels, I think. 2 pixels would be better. Oh, when this number is over 1,000, can you make it bolder for me? Where does the tax number come from?" Like, I don't ever want to get involved with that again for the rest of my life. I'm totally over that. So I'm like, I'm done with I love the Power Platform as a user. I use Power BI all the time. It's phenomenal. It's a great product. It's so simple. The pricing is fair for what it does. Super powerful. My full stack life. It is exactly like full stack development. So I love the Power Platform. I just wouldn't want to make a living doing it. Scorpion says, "Do you ever use index views to maintain real-time aggregated data?" Yes, I absolutely do, and I love them. They're phenomenal for emergency duct tape. When someone says, "I need a really fast report right now," like it has to be transactionally consistent with the current data, I love them. They come with a huge amount of problems. I mean, they're just like an index. The more indexes that you add, the slower things are going to go. Come with a lot of problems, but the cool part is just that it is immediately available. I don't have to change the queries. I don't have to, sometimes SQL Server picks them up, sometimes they don't. It does slow down inserts, updates, and deletes, just like an index, but super easy, just way slick. I will also tell the company too, "Hey, yo, this is kind of technical debt. I'm going to put it in now, but you need to be aware that if you don't invest in hardware, I'm going to give you this fast report. It's going to work immediately. And it's not going to cost you anything in terms of development time, but you're going to have to start buying more hardware, because the more of these that I give you, the more performance it's going to take, the more slower your storage is going to become, the slower your inserts, updates, and deletes become, and all of that. Mr. Wormhole, that's curious. Why does the industry not have no junior back-end roles for Java and .NET? That's a really odd question. I don't know. Mike says, I went from 2014 to 2019, and luckily the only issue I've had is additional indexing I had to do on queries. It's been such a dice roll 2019. My thing is, as long as you don't go into 2019 database compat level, you can upgrade pretty confidently. But just the thing that I'd warn people is, out of the 5 cumulative updates that have shipped so far, SQL Server 2019 has had 5 cumulative updates. 3 of them have involved database corruption. They've had to do fixes for database corruption that were new corruption issues in 2019. So I'd just be a little bit leery. I'd go extra heavy on the DBCC check DB if you go to 2019, and some of these were involved whether you went to 2019 compat level or not. So just be super careful about that. Which is part of why I get excited about 2019. It has so much. Microsoft invested so much in cool features now that they haven't had before. I'm just loving how much accelerated database recovery, scalar function inlining. There are all kinds of things that really change the way the query optimizer works, the way the storage engine works, but those also come with risks. And the risk is corruption. Dimitri, you've asked that a couple times. Yeah, so that would be real easy to prove, right? I mean, you could just prove that in 60 seconds with a demo, right? CGS says, can locking and blocking occur in TempDB? Absolutely. Yes, totally. So now, of course, you could have it if you create real tables in TempDB. People never think of that, but it happens from time to time. You can create a real table in TempDB, absolutely get blocking and locking there. You can have blocking and locking on system objects. So you can have system objects where people are trying to create or drop temp tables. When enough of them happen, you run into these latching problems. Latching isn't technically blocking, but for all effective purposes, it's the same thing when we're talking about TempDB and queries not being able to make progress. And then, of course, you have global temp tables. If you have global temp tables, you can run into locking and blocking on there as well. 2019, Josh says 2019 Express on Linux has been great for personal projects. You have a point there. I've been meaning to write for a while, too, that Express Edition is like the new Standard Edition. It's powerful enough for a lot of people's projects. Now, it's limited. It maxes out at 4 CPU cores. It's like 1.5 gigs of RAM, which is not a lot, and 10 gigs per database. But you can go a long way with Express Edition. Now, you don't get a lot of stuff. There are things that you don't get, like SQL Server Agent to do backup jobs on a timed basis, but it's not bad. It's better than MySQL. Who said that out loud? All right, let's see if we have any other questions left. Surly Dev, anything that's piled up in there that you've been able to find? Anyone whose questions are worth answering? Surly Dev's like the gatekeeper around here, so y'all have to be good to him. You have to be nice to him. Fraud says, does a high-performance server setting on a VM really make that much difference for a SQL Server VM and on the host? So what you really have to do is you have to set it at every level. You have to set it in the VM, in the host, or in the virtualization layer, and in the host hardware itself, because any of those can override. Now, the guest isn't going to override if you set it at both the host and at the virtualization layer. I just haven't had that many times lately where I've been like, this is the smoking gun. You didn't turn this on, because usually there are other VMs running on the same host that are burning up CPU cycles. So, Surly Dev says, he's copying in a few things from YouTube. So let's see. So he's probably getting ready to launch one. So I'll stop there for a second and let that catch up. So today, to give you all a peek into my life, for those of you who joined a little bit on the late side, we got like 84 people in here now. So for today, I'm going to be just taking the day off, woo, because I solved the client's problems yesterday, so I have a little hole in my schedule here. So I'm going to go sit outside on the balcony and just go sip coffee and eat my lox and bagel. And one of you asked what lox was. You can Google for that, but it's smoked salmon. So it's like it's the kind of thing you find in Jewish delis in New York, is how I originally got started with it. And if you've never had it before, it's terrifying. Like it smells weird and it tastes weird, but it's a nice, delightful acquired taste. Before it disappeared, just earlier, I've had plugged in one from Damien on YouTube, said, talk to me about clustered column store indexes versus non-clustered. I struggle to find the proper usage for clustered column store indexes. Data warehouse fact tables. So with a data warehouse fact table, every night, and so for fact, if you haven't used a fact table before, it's like the sales, your company's sales history for every sale line item they've ever done. Every night, you load the data warehouse with yesterday's sales. You do it in one big batch, like 1,000,000 rows all at once, and then people query it all day long. But with a fact table, they're usually really wide, like they have all kinds of numbers: customer ID, product ID, branch, time of day sold, product number, quantity, price before discounts, price after discounts, whether the customer was wearing a fedora. It's got like 5 million columns that make no sense to most people. So whenever you query out of them, you can't predict what people are going to filter on or group by or what they're going to sort by. So clustered column store indexes help you pick just the specific columns that you care about instead of scanning the whole table. Plus, in data warehouse fact tables, people are usually doing grouping queries. Nobody wants to see every individual fedora that was sold yesterday. They want to see in total how many fedoras did we sell yesterday and what was the total revenue. So clustered column store indexes are great for when the data is loaded in batches. You have a really wide table consisting mostly of numbers and dates, and you can't predict what people are going to query for. It's great for that. Preben says over on YouTube, is it possible to performance tune SQL Server graph node and edge tables? I have no idea. Because whenever I've seen people use graph, I'm like, there are open sources for that? It's open source databases for that? And they're free? And they've been around for a really long time? And SQL Server's $2,000 a core, and Enterprise Edition is $7,000 a core. Why would you want to use a version 1 feature in a product that costs you money? That's not really what it's designed for. So for me, I haven't even seen people use it in a serious production way, let alone use it to the point where they need to performance tune it for you. And typically for me, that's the case with Microsoft version 1 and 1.5 type features, is that they compile, and as Microsoft's like, oh, thank God, whew, that product didn't cause database corruption and it compiled. All right, what else do we need to do? And like figuring out how to performance tune it is so far back on the project manager's list of priorities that it never even ships. Like there are no diagnostic info to tell you what you need to do. Fiker says, do declaring local variables within stored procedures help help parameter sniffing problems? Yes, you should do it all over the place, because when you do that, then it leads people to call me for consulting. Big fan, big fan. So it solves parameter sniffing in the sense that you get the same execution plan every time. So now you go from sometimes having a good plan and sometimes having a crappy plan to always having a crappy plan. So I could do this all day. I laugh when I see people doing it. There are edge cases where you really do want to declare a local variable, but it's a terrifically bad idea, and I explain why in my Fundamentals of Parameter Sniffing classes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So Gara Masala says, tell us any of your nightmare on-call stories during your days as a senior DBA. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Let's see here. What was one of the worst on-call stories as a senior DBA? Because I'm thinking about a few that were pretty bad. I know one that I don't think I've told in public in years. Okay, so I used to be really into defragmenting server racks. So I was in charge of a data center on the sysadmin team, and I was responsible for making sure that we could get as much space as we could out of our data, all our racks, our physical servers and racks. Listen, kids, I know you find this hard to believe, but stuff wasn't always in the cloud. It used to be in a data center. You'd walk down the hall and you could touch it with your fingers. Nobody would shoot you either. There weren't like armed guards at the door. So I would try to pack in more servers into my data center, and every now and then we'd deprecate servers and we'd pull them out, but they were always in weird, odd arrangements, so I didn't have contiguous space where I needed to slot in like a new array kind of thing. So one day, I'm moving a middle of the night, Saturday, middle of the night, I'd arranged it for an outage window. I'm moving a giant 4U server. So 4U, for those of you who haven't seen before, that's 4 rack units tall, which tends to be a pretty heavy server. Think 60, 70, 80 pounds. I was moving it from the very bottom of the rack up to the very top of the rack so that I could have more free space down at the bottom. So this is a server like 70, 80 pounds, middle of the night, no one else is around. I pull it out of the rack and I go to put it up at the top of the rack and slide it in. Now, for those of you who haven't worked with rack mount servers before, racks are very fiddly, like the sliding rails on server, and you got to get them in just right. Think like the drawers at your house. You know how the drawers at your house, when you pull them out, there's like metal sleeves and all that where you got to lay them in just right. So I'm trying to put it in up at the very top, and I'm a tall guy. I'm like 6'3". I'm trying to put it in at the very top. I might be 6'3". There ain't no muscle on these arms. If this was like a chicken wing, you would take it back. There's like not enough meat on the bones to even warrant putting the sauce on. I don't work out. I'm like, yeah, exactly. 2 people for health and safety. Not only did I not have 2 persons, I didn't have half a brain. So I'm up there doing this. I'm like, I got it. And then, of course, I didn't have it, and it dropped. It missed my foot by like that much. It was so close. The sharp edge of the server, because of course it doesn't come down flat, it comes down diagonal, so there's a pointy edge at the edge of the case, comes straight down on the floor, misses my foot by that much, shatters the floor tile, because we had suspended or raised tiles for our data center floors, shatters the floor and goes down into the concrete below. My heart was going 100 miles an hour. I had to start walking around just to kind of breathe and, take a deep, calm breath and chillax. Because I was like, I could have broken my foot, or worse, I could have like permanently lost parts of my foot. I would have had blood all over the data center tile. I would have had to go and call an ambulance. And of course, in the data center, no one's going to hear me over the screaming fans. Help, I dropped a server on my foot. I don't even know the address here. So I was just completely freaked out, had to take a little walk around, calm down. It was like that when I got there. Yes, exactly. Calm down. And then eventually I calmed down. I'm like, okay, I can do this. We're going to be all right. I put the server back in the bottom. Server was bashed up pretty bad, but I was like, I got to at least put it in and see if it boots, because it was, thankfully, we deprecated that server. Credit to IBM, who made that server, booted right up beautifully as if nothing happened. I didn't smash the motherboard or anything. But so the thing goes back in, plug it all in. I went and got another floor tile. I knew where we kept the floor tiles, put that back in. And then when my boss came in on Monday, I'm like, okay, let me close the door and I need to tell you what I did. And I promise I will never do that again. But there's a server up there we should probably never show to the public because the face is smashed in. But whew, then I'm like, I'll buy another floor tile, whatever it takes. But my boss is like, you're a moron. You're really an idiot. So that's probably, I have a lot of on-call stories. That's one of my favorites. Then some other day I'll tell the story, because I've told my power failure story a few times. That was kind of fun as well. Or air conditioning failure a few times. Whew, that was a little bananas. So a quick shout out to this week's sponsor, who had nothing to do with me dropping servers. So Quest Software sponsored this week's websites, or this week's webcast. If you go to brentozar.com/go/optimization, they have a totally free ebook that you can go download about how you performance tune T-SQL, how you make SQL Server queries go faster. So you can read about that over at brentozar.com/go/optimization. Also, shout outs to I'm Talentless. I just love that name. I'm Talentless and DeBrain69 for being recent folks who joined in on the club. Fraud says no one would have found you till Monday. Yeah, my wife would have called in because she would have been like, all right, she knows I have no nightlife. It's not like I would go out and party after I do an outage night. But yeah, oh God, that was not pleasant. I felt really bad after that one. That was, oh man, you talk about close cuts. And I'm just not a physically active person. You got to know your limitations. Fraud says, we used to have a big red power off in our data center. It got pressed 3 times in the time I was there, one on Christmas Eve. In that same data center where I dropped the server, one of the executives during an early tour before we put everything in, and this was before I got there too as well, one of the executives leaned back against the wall and hit the big red button when they hadn't covered it up, and it were good times. Subrat says, in what scenario did we use dynamic SQL for development? Oh, when you have one stored procedure that gets called with all kinds of different parameters, and it needs to do different things based on those parameters. So let's say that you have a stored procedure that sometimes need to look up customers by zip code, sometimes by phone number, sometimes by zip code and phone number, sometimes by name, sometimes by date balance owed. If you have one that really needs to be super flexible, dynamic SQL helps with that because it lets SQL Server craft the right query plan for your search parameters. So if you're just searching by customer balance, it'll use the customer balance index. If you're searching for last purchase date, it'll use the last purchase index. Otherwise, if you try to write one query that does everything, it's called the kitchen sink design pattern. And Aaron Bertrand has a really good post on that. If you search for kitchen sink Aaron Bertrand, Aaron's got a post on the T-SQL anti-pattern called the kitchen sink that doesn't perform worth a damn, doesn't use indexes, and that's a great starting point of when you want to use dynamic SQL instead. People don't usually know about that, about when to use dynamic SQL until they face a really hard problem, and they're like, why does this perform worth a damn? And then that's where the dynamic SQL comes in. That guy says, coming back over here, that guy says, does it create multiple query plans for that single dynamic SQL procedure? Yes, because the execution plan doesn't get created until the dynamic SQL has been built and called. So you go assemble the Autobots together into one transformer, and then when you go say Autobots unite, that's when SQL Server builds the query plan. I know, there were 3 people who got that joke. All right, so I should ask y'all too. I was going to say, one of the things I wanted to know from y'all in terms of the stream is tell me what problem you're working on this week. So tell me what it is that you have to solve over in your environment. I'm always curious to go hear what problem people are facing, like the thing that the boss has said, you have to figure out how to do blank this week. Jedi Mind Gorilla says, oh Lord, Jedi Mind Gorilla's ashamed to admit. He's like, my boss has me cleaning the bathrooms. Handy documentation. Oh, okay. No wonder you're here on Twitch ignoring. Wow, Havitigler connecting to DB2. Wow. Oh, that is tricky. Arsenal, numerous issues with clients working with our software. Support kind of stuff. Man, I hate support. Support's kind of rough. Josh over on YouTube asked, do you know of a good source for info on how to properly build spatial indexes? Search for Greg Lowe. Greg Lowe out of Australia. He's the only one I know who's worked on spatial indexes. Lee, thank you for the back rub. I appreciate it. CGS TempDB locking and blocking. Oh, cool. Oh, Camaro makes low code faster. I don't know, Camaro, if you saw earlier, there's somebody in here named IROC driver now, and I thought maybe you changed your name, like you didn't want to talk about horsepower anymore and you wanted to call it the IROC now. Let's see. Jaded's table partitioning to segregate one client's data. Nice. Jedi, I'm working to convince him to use Ola in your stuff. So check this out. So Jedi, there's something interesting that you might find interesting, and I certainly did. I don't know what Ola Hollengren's up to these days. I have been meaning to email him, and it's odd to go say this over on the stream. If you go to olahollengren.com and you look at the version history, he used to update this thing all the time, and he hasn't been active since January. And if you go to his GitHub repo, so Ola Hollengren GitHub, if you go to his GitHub repo, he hasn't done anything in like 6 months. So I'm like getting a little bit worried. I'm like, we need to go check in on Ola and make sure that he's okay. Because there are also a lot of issues filed over on his repo, and there are like 20 pull requests now. So I'm like, Ola, did you fall off the face of the earth? I get worried about this fellow. Let's see, Morton's working on performance on 22 AX servers. Just saw it start as the first and only DBA to touch the SQL Server. Dynamics AX is a whole hell of a lot of fun. Woo! Jedi Mind Gorilla says he needs a surly dev like you do. Yes, absolutely, he does. He does. Oh man, Ola, that's a terrible thought. Or man, CGS, that is a terrible thought. Now I really got to go check in on him because I worry about that one. G. Bargsley says problems that he's working on. His update stats fail nightly with a query processor could not start for parallelism. Wow. Wow, that's kind of fun. Cool, that's terrible. Greg, I don't know that it's probably not related, but if you're running CheckDB at the same time, just make sure that you're fully patched. Okay, so here's my thought. CheckDB had this known issue for a while where it got a giant memory grant, and that would cause cascading problems, like you would run out of worker threads for other reasons. Like CheckDB got this giant memory grant, which caused other queries to wait on resource semaphore because they couldn't get enough memory to start. And then between all the thread allocations with those, I couldn't grant threads in the middle of the night because of that exact problem. They were running multiple CheckDBs at exactly the same time. Knowing you, I doubt that's the problem because I doubt you're that far behind on patching, because this was like CheckDB had this issue 2, 3, 4 years ago, but I just wanted to mention it. David says, have you imagined a place where they store backups but they don't test restores? Yes, they're called my clients. Yes, sadly. M. Gomez says, I work in BI. This week I'm working in designing ER in a data dictionary. What do you use for diagrams and documentation? I don't do any documentation for data models myself. The two names that I remember from the industry from years ago were Irwin and ER Studio. It was like ER Win and ER Studio. I have no idea what's current today. Like, there might be a good open source toolkit. I would ask y'all, if you use something for data modeling and documentation, like relationships between tables, put it in over at Twitch and see if anyone else, because that way you can get a recommendation from them. Arsenal latest issue is that Crystal Reports is being weird, and I haven't learned that one yet. Someone still uses Crystal Reports. Wow. I don't know how widespread that is. I don't do any reporting apps anymore, but I used Crystal Reports 15 years ago. That's kind of neat. Not the DBA you're looking for. Working how to stop giving our users from giving out usernames and passwords to anyone who asks on email. Oh, I really feel for security people. Security is one of those things that Abex says, please put their answers in YouTube. You're not my real dad. Watch the screen. Things go by on the screen. Buckle up. Pay attention. There's value here. It's free. You're not even paying for this. I totally feel sorry for security people having to, for having to deal with us users, us human meatbags. So thought for a second. Have y'all heard of deep fakes? So you've heard of deep fakes, and you know that there's deep fake audio, right? Now you can go to Vocodes is the one that I was amazed with recently. I want to say it's Vocodes. I think it was this. Yeah, Vocodes. So if you go to vo.codes, you can have things voiced out loud from people like Bill Gates. So you can put in here, I don't know, I don't think that this audio is going to work, but let's try it. So let's say, let's see if this works. Now it takes a minute for it to compile it. Sending. Now let's see if it'll, want to speak? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe not. But it went totally viral recently, so a bunch of people have been using it. But give that a shot, vo.codes. So the whole security thing, there's going to come a time when you're going to get deep fakes and it's going to sound like your parents. or your kids. It's going to be like, hey, this is your father speaking. I'm in prison in Tijuana. And you're going to be like, again? He's like, I need $300 or 4,000 pesos quickly to pay off this woman and her donkey. Can you wire it to me at this Bitcoin? And it's going to sound so convincing, especially with an operator on the other end typing things out and getting it to speech quickly and correctly, that holy smoke. Jedi Mind Gorilla, that's pretty good. So, man, I am just like totally not looking for that. As I get older, you just know spam is going to get so phenomenally good, and they're just going to be practically reaching into your wallet. So I'm like, the timer's going off as soon as I can retire and get out of technology. I'm going to totally throw my phone in the river. I'm like never going to answer calls. I don't want to answer email, none of that stuff. All right, so I think I'm going to stop there. We're coming up on 7 a.m. Pacific. I'm going to stop. Data's better. Download more RAM. I'm going to stop there, and we'll call it quits for today. And so the rest of y'all are asking great questions. Unfortunately, of course, with the number of questions I get, I can't answer all of them. But I'll give a quick shout out to dba.stackexchange. If you go to dba.stackexchange.com. This is where you can post questions, and other people will go through and answer the questions. Surly Dev, I know, right? This is unreal. I need to go do some real life stuff. I need to too as well. I need to go bail and I say do real life stuff, but I'm really just going to go probably walk to Starbucks, get a coffee, and then just go sitting out on the balcony. So thanks y'all for hanging out with me this morning. Don't forget to subscribe if you want notifications whenever I start streaming. I don't think I'll stream again today. We have one scheduled on Saturday and Sunday, and I'll be there for those. The Saturday and Sunday ones are probably only going to be an hour, though, because I have an emergency client this weekend who popped up. And I know I told y'all I wanted to work on the statistics card deck thing for this weekend. There's no way I'm going to be able to pull that off in time for Saturday, so I'm going to hold that one, and we'll just do probably live coding for Saturday and Sunday stream. So thanks a lot, y'all, and I will see y'all in the next webcast. Adios.